Welcome to Murder by Nature, where the darkness of true crime, unsolved disappearances, and chilling mysteries come to life. I am your host, Jasmine Ramirez, and if you're brave enough to join us today, prepare for the journey into the unknown. Today, I have a special guest on, my daughter, that's just listening in the background and will pop in and out a little bit. Our references for today are Netflix Lover, Stalker, and Murder, A&E.com, People Magazine, Oxygen.com, Reddit, All That's Interesting, Court Listener, Daily Crime, The Cinemaholic, and The Charlie Project again. In the quiet heartland of Nebraska, an ordinary man found himself entangled in an extraordinary nightmare. After dating a woman for just 2 fleeting weeks, and she mysteriously disappeared without explanation, leaving behind only questions and sooner something far more sinister. Over the next 3 years, his life became a walking horror as he received relentless torment of nearly 15,000 emails and up to 50,000 text messages. The messages were venomous, riddled with spite and jealousy, as if the author by an unseen entity hell-bent on tormenting him. What began as a brief romantic spiraled into this chilling descendant of paranoia, obsession, fear, and courtesy of a stalker whose presence was both intangible and inescapable. In 2012, Dave Kroupa packed up his life and moved to Omaha, Nebraska, ready for a fresh start. He recently ended his 12-year relationship with Amy Flora. The two met in 2000 while working together at a truck stop. They began to grow apart after their work schedules conflicted, and that led them to separate. Amy moved back to her hometown of Omaha with her children, and Dave relocated to be closer to their children. While their split was amicable, it was really easy, it left him grappling with the uncertainty of a single life. To support himself and his kids, Dave took a new job as a manager of a busy auto repair shop. This position demanded long hours and sharp focus, but despite his demanding schedule, he felt the need to recenter himself back into the dating world, where it seemed everything was going to take a big shift. In those days, online dating was becoming the go-to way of meeting new people, so Dave decided to create a profile on a popular dating site. The prospect was meeting new people that excited him, even though the process kind of felt foreign after so many years in a committed relationship. Within just a few days, he matched with a woman named Liz. Liz was a 34-year-old divorced mom of 2 who owned a house cleaning business, seeming to be very approachable, down to earth. She had an engaging profile and appeared to share Dave's desires of this no-string attachment connection, which this suited him perfectly. At first, it seemed like it was fate. Dave was getting into the dating scene, and this was a chance to ease back into it without the complications. Although Dave was ready to dip his toes back in, he made it very clear to her. He wanted no strings. Now, out of this long-term relationship, he wasn't interested in being tied down. He wanted firm boundaries that he was going to date who he wanted, she can date who she wanted, and they were just going to kind of roll the dice and see what happened. Now, Liz assured Dave that she was looking for something casual. She wanted the same thing. She shared the understanding, set the stage for it. No pressure, no strings attached. Now, Liz was very cool, very smiley, very energetic, very full of life. She and Dave shared passions of motorcycles, heavy metal music, and sci-fi movies. They bonded over each other, both having a son and a daughter, 2 kids together. Now, their first date went really well, and then they began to see each other somewhat regularly in downtown Omaha. It was the exact type of mix that they had for his personal space and their dating space, that if he wanted someone there, he had someone, but he can just hang out. Dave thought, this is exactly what I needed in my life. In fall of 2012, 6 months after meeting Liz, Dave's otherwise ordinary day at work took a particular turn. A stunning woman walked into his auto repair shop. Her presence commanded the room as she approached the counter discussing maintenance for her Ford Explorer. Now, there was an undeniable spark between them, but Dave, ever so professional, refrained from acting on it while on the job. Days later, fate perhaps, brought her back into his life when he stumbled upon her profile on a dating site. He reached out and discovered her name was Cari Farver. Cari seemed radiant. She had warmth, energy, the kind of person who would brighten any room that she entered. Beneath this lively exterior, however, she was a woman who battled her share of darkness. Diagnosed with depression in her late 20s, shortly after giving birth to her son Max, she struggled, and that escalated to a bipolar disorder. By 2012, at the age of 37, Cari regained control of her life thanks to her medication and her stable job. She was a computer programmer. She was determined to live her life fully, even if the shadows lingered on the edge of her world. When Cari returned to Dave's job a short time later, he seized this chance to deepen their connection. They exchanged numbers and plans for a dinner date at Applebee's. This was set for October 29th. Now, during their meal, their chemistry was undeniable. They quickly established the same grounds. Neither wanted a serious relationship. Both were dating other people. They wanted something casual and free of complications. Now, during this dinner date, though, Dave's cell phone began to blow up with calls and text messages from Liz. He was initially ignoring these messages, but as they continued, he decided he was going to contact her and tell her, hey, I'm on a date, I can't respond. Now, as they were wrapping up dinner, they both agreed that they were going to go back to his apartment, but that's when the night took an odd turn. Liz unexpectedly arrived. She rang the doorbell at the security door of Dave's apartment. Dave left Cari in his apartment and went down to go talk to Liz. She was crying, upset, and insisted that Dave let her in so she could retrieve some of her belongings from his apartment. Dave let her through the door, went back to the apartment, and told Cari what was going on. While it made for an awkward moment, Cari, composed, seemingly unbothered, brushed it off as not a big deal and left Dave to sort things out with Liz. Now, Liz only lingered for a moment, catching a glimpse of Cari before they ushered out. Now, back in the apartment, Liz was crying, collecting her belongings and acting like she just needed something and she was having a stressful day. And Dave kind of didn't want to hear it, so he just ushered her out real fast. And then once Liz was gone, Dave wasted no time calling Cari and heading to her place, where they continued their night. What followed was a whirlwind passion as Dave and Cari's relationship intensified over the next few weeks. Cari began spending more time at Dave's apartment, citing that the convenience of her demanding work project made it easy, and she was beginning a week-long project at work that would require her to work late nights and early mornings. She arranged for her teenage son to stay with her mother and stepfather during that week, and Dave agreed. She could stay with him, so it was more convenient for them. Her office was close to his place, and this eliminated the hassle of having to commute so far. She was about 45 minutes from her house to work versus Dave just being right around the corner. Yet, what seemed like a very practical arrangement soon took an eerie undertone. The romance through fury felt strange, accelerated, almost too perfect. And as the days unfold, the shadows of something darker began to creep into their life, unnoticed at first, but destined to shatter their world. On November 13, 2012, 37-year-old Cari Farver disappeared without a trace, leaving her family in a state of growing dread and confusion. Dave, the man that she's been casually dating for a few weeks, recalls that morning as ordinary. They woke up, got ready for work, exchanged a kiss, made plans to see each other later that evening, but then when he was at work just a few hours later, Dave received an unexpected text from Cari that would mark the beginning of a sinister and unsettling ordeal. In the message, Cari suddenly proposed that she moved in with Dave. Neither of them had ever expressed this interest, and both agreed to keep it casual. So when Dave politely declined her advance, her text quickly changed. She turned angry, then hostile, and then bombarded him with increasingly aggressive messages. One that said, "Fine, I hate you. I'm dating someone else. I don't want to see you anymore. Go away." Now, as this was happening, Cari was also sending some cryptic messages to her mother, Nancy, and her teenage son, Max, claiming that she had taken a new job in Kansas and would soon make arrangements to pick Max up. Nancy, alarmed because they had a whole plan, and this seemed very out of character, repeatedly tried to call her daughter, but she didn't answer. 2 days later, as the messages from Cari grew stranger, Nancy's worry deepened. Meanwhile, Dave began to receive a flood of increasing texts and emails from Cari. At first, he shrugged them off, thinking, I dodged a bullet with this one. But it didn't stop there. Soon the texts came from dozens of phone numbers and email accounts. Friends and families of Cari got similar messages, each one more erratic and unsettling. Although they were all skeptical about it, they couldn't prove that this wasn't her. So it was only when Cari failed to show up to her brother's wedding on November 16th that her mother reported her missing. But even with that, nothing happened. Now, despite her pleas, the police dismissed the case, noting that Cari had a history of bipolar disorder and reasons that she was an adult and can make her own decisions. See, that's why I say you're an adult. As the days turned into weeks, the messages became more bizarre and nasty in nature, even stalkerish. Dave received threats like, "I hate you so much, I want to drive a knife into your heart," and chilling taunts of, "How was that coffee?" Now, this was sent while he was at dinner. He would just be in a cafe and receive messages about what he was wearing, what he was doing, and the messages didn't seem to just target Dave. They extended to anyone close to him, even female customers that he interacted with at work. The police felt like this case seemed like something that we would see in the initial phases of stalking. His ex-girlfriend and ex-wife, Amy Flora, the mother of his children, also began seeking messages too, which left her terrified. She forbade the children from staying and visiting Dave's house. She didn't want the situation to get out of hand, and she was afraid someone was going to get hurt. But the situation escalated when Liz, the other woman Dave had been seeing, reported that her car was keyed, and it wrote "whore." This was spray painted on her garage wall, and she showed up to Dave's place kind of shaken. She was super upset. She didn't know what was going on, and she claimed that Cari had to be behind it. Soon after, Dave began receiving photos of vandalism in real time with text messages from Cari boasting about her actions and vowing to do worse. Cari was definitely jealous of Liz. That's what he thought. That must be what sparked all of this. Things even took a darker turn in January of 2013 when Dave spotted the familiar car in his parking lot. Recognizing this as Cari's Ford Explorer, he photographed the license plate and alerted the police. Now, Cari went missing back in November, so it took 2 months for them to find her car. But all of these text messages, all of this information was coming through as they are going through this time. So this all happened in 2 months from the time that she left to the time that they found her car. Now, when police searched the vehicle, they found one single fingerprint, but it wasn't Cari's. I'll let you ponder on that just a little bit. But meanwhile, while these messages from Cari continued, often including photos inside of Liz's home, adding this layer of surveillance to the harassment. As their harassment grew more intense, Dave and Liz rekindled their relationship out of a sense of mutual protection. This only seemed to provoke Cari further. Their phones would blow up with messages while they were together, some containing threats to harm Liz, others issuing cryptic messages about Dave's actions. Now, Dave's high school friend Heather also became a target, because one night in January of 2014, yes, I said 2014, while Dave was at her house, someone threw a brick through her window. Now, despite the mounting of evidence that something was terribly wrong, Cari continued a digital presence, which made it impossible to convince authorities that there was foul play involved. Now, she was on Facebook. She was on text messaging, emails. She was doing all of these things. She was posting statuses. So, to authorities, she was alive. Her family remained haunted by her absence, though, especially when she started to miss these major milestones, like her son's birthday, holidays, but the most heartbreaking of them all, her father's funeral. Nancy, heartbroken and desperate, knew her daughter would never willingly stay away from her family, especially her beloved son. Yet the messages persisted, driving an even deeper wedge of fear and chaos into the lives of everyone involved. The line between reality and manipulation blurred, leaving Dave and those around him trapped in a web of obsession, malice, and unseen menace that seemed to thrive on unraveling lives. At one point, Liz called Dave at work and said one of her windows was smashed in. Her walls were vandalized and her clothes were stabbed and slashed with a knife like murder style. The detectives now had probable cause to arrest Cari in a stalking case, but they couldn't find her. Dave started to think that the paranoia is becoming their life, and you're thinking all of the time about the what ifs. It's hard to know something that could be real and something that they were imagining. This is when he started to drink. He wanted to take off the edge during the stalking, and he was on the road to having a mental breakdown. Now, as you can hear from all of these timelines, years and months were passing by, and he constantly had someone attacking him. On August 17, 2013, Liz called Dave in a panic. For months, the two had bonded over these threatening messages that they were receiving from Cari, but now things seemingly escalated. Cari said her house had been set ablaze, but her children weren't home at the time. But she did have pets, 2 dogs, a cat, and a snake, and they all were murdered in this house fire. Now, Dave soon received a text from Cari's phone, and it said, "I'm not lying. I set that nasty whore's house on fire. I hope the whore and her kids die in it." Now, detectives suspected that Cari was behind this arson, and after the fire, Liz decided she was moving. She didn't tell Dave where she was going, which he understood because she wanted to protect herself from Cari. He told friends that he lost his partner, the one who understood what he was going through. He felt like the only thing he can do was pack up and move too. He changed phone numbers, got a new job. He wanted to rebuild his life away from Cari. But in the back of his mind, he knew that she was still out there. She was still lurking. So this is when he decided that he needed to protect his family and purchase a gun for safety. After a few months, Dave was ready to jump back into the dating scene again. I don't know how he would be.
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't. I'd get back with my ex-wife. I'd go back home.
But he was jumping back in. He was getting back into that dating scene. And he matched with a new girl and planned a date.
No, it's probably Cari.
He went to the restaurant, waited for her to show, waited and waited. But to his despair, she messaged him saying it was Cari. He felt like it was only a matter of time before someone got hurt for real now. Meanwhile, Nancy was still receiving these cryptic messages. Remember, Nancy's her mom. And it was all coming from social media accounts now that belonged to her daughter. And I'm going to point out, these were social media accounts that she had before she went missing. So not something that was just made. And they were telling her mom, "Don't look for me." Now, in mid-November of 2015, Dave and Liz's relationship hit another breaking point when Dave decided he wanted to pursue a different relationship with a different woman. The devastation really hit Liz, and though she kept her true feelings hidden, this presented kind of this, "I'm composed, it's okay, we're no string attached," but she was furious inside. She kind of felt that this was a resentment. They went through this whole thing together with Cari. It's been years now. So remember, we're in 2015 now. A lot of years have passed by, and they've been going through this together. By December 4th, though, Liz found a new way to channel her anger. She went to the police claiming that she had been receiving harassing messages, not from Cari this time, though, but from Amy Flora. See, you said ex-wife, and look who popped in. Dave's ex and the mother of his children. After years of blaming Cari for all this relentless torment, Liz was now shifting the blame to Amy, alleging that she had been behind it all. What made Liz's claims even more disturbing was her mentioning of Dave's gun. So, days earlier, Dave had discovered that his gun went missing from the lockbox that he had in his closet. He found this a little unsettling, but couldn't connect it to anything. So remember, Dave bought this gun to protect them from Cari. And now the gun's missing, and Liz is bringing it up. Liz told officers that she believed Amy stole the gun, and that she was describing every single detail about it in her harassment complaint to detectives. Now, if you're following along, this gets a little twisted here, and we're going to find that path going through. Liz went to detectives to file a complaint on Amy because she said Amy was harassing her. But during the harassment claims, she brings up the gun. So that's where we are right now. But this kind of pitted officers. They really were not interested in Liz's story because now their suspicions were growing on Liz about her involvement with Cari. She's always kind of putting in, "Oh, this was Cari, this was Cari, this was Cari" for the last few years. And now she's trying to take all of that and pin it to Amy. Liz allowed police to download her phone to be able to share the harassing messages that she claimed Amy was sending. And in truth, the officers were just searching for evidence that was linking Liz to years of stalking Dave, potentially to Cari's murder, and she was painting herself as a victim. desperate for justice, but the detectives were being able to see through her cracks very carefully. This situation took a sinister turn, though, the very next day. Early Saturday morning, Liz sent the investigators screenshots of more threatening messages, supposedly from Amy. But by evening, the drama escalated to a shocking new level. At 6:40 p.m., officers were dispatched to a remote wilderness park in Council Bluffs, Iowa. There, they found Liz sitting on the ground near the driver's side of her parked car, clenching her leg. She had been shot in the thigh and claimed Amy ambushed her. Liz's story, however, was riddled with inconsistencies. She provided vague, contradicting accounts of what was going on, that there was a struggle, claims that Amy had approached her without warning. Despite Liz's inconsistencies that Amy was the person that was attacking her, her version of events failed to add up. Police acted on her accusations, though. They went straight to Amy's house. Later that night, Amy, who had been home with her 2-year-old son, was stunned to find police at her door, guns drawn. Now, because it was a shooting, and she's saying, hey, Amy did this is who came and shot me, they went there fully like, okay, we know that Liz is a little out there right now, but we have to take this seriously, because what if she really did shoot her? Officers then inspected her car and found that it was cold to the touch. This was a clear indication that it hasn't been driven. Liz was adamant. She was denying all involvement in the shooting. She was denying involvement in the harassment. She said that she did nothing to her. And this only made their wheels turn a little bit about Liz's account. Because remember, they weren't kind of on her side to begin with. They felt like she lost Dave, kind of went a little bit crazy. Now it's on Amy. Carrie's not the one doing it anymore. Everything just was piling up and piling up and piling up. Now, this became the turning point of when detectives examined Liz's phone a little bit more closely. The so-called harassing messages she claimed were from Amy had actually been sent from Liz's own device. Now, there was patterns of manipulation, deceit that was starting to come up. This only tied Liz to fabricating these stories, but also tied her to Cari Farver's disappearance and death. What initially seemed like a tangled web of harassment, retaliation, now pointed directly at Liz. The shooting was meant to frame Amy as a violent aggressor, and this began to look like a very calculated move into maintaining Liz's narrative of victimhood. Detectives were no longer questioning who was tormenting Liz. They were questioning just how far Liz was willing to go to protect her secrets, and what other dark truths may have been hidden in the trail of her lies. In the spring of 2015, the case of Cari Farver took a new turn. It had been 2.5 years since anyone in Cari's family had seen her, and her unexplained absence continued to haunt them. Now, investigators Ryan Avis and Sergeant Jimmy Dodd were intrigued by this. There were some strange circumstances that were surrounding her disappearance, and they decided they were going to volunteer to take on the case. From the outset, Davis and Dodd were really struck by the way that this case was unfolding. When they visited Cari's home, they found it preserved, still full of her clothes, her belongings. Her bank accounts revealed 2 transactions the day before she vanished in November of 2012, but there had been 0 activity since. For an adult to leave behind all of their possessions, abandon their finances, and sever every connection without a trace was far from normal. It just didn't add up. The investigators reached a chilling conclusion. They could not prove that Cari was alive, with no credible evidence to suggest otherwise, and they pivoted the case to from a missing persons to a death investigation. Now, I think that this is really, really a pivotal moment in this case, because all that they have of Cari being alive is Facebook, text messages, and emails. 0 phone calls, because she never answered the phone. 0 in-person meets. When she was stalking Dave at restaurants, cafes, wherever, and she would send him the messages saying, I see you, he would look for her and she wouldn't be around. So this really kind of sparked the interest of Avis and Dodd wanting to jump in and check this case out. What are your thoughts?
It's weird. It's a lot. Like, it's crazy. Like, is she dead? Is she not dead? Do they not know?
I don't know. She was sending all those messages for so long.
To do that for a couple of years, though, like, you gotta be committed. She was plotting. You gotta be committed.
After dating for 2 weeks.
No, that's crazy. Like, I want someone to be obsessed with me, too, but not that obsessed. Oh, shawty. Crazy.
Well,
She's doing too much.
We are going to break this in to 2 parts. This is the end of part 1, this unsettling tale. And as always, I would like to thank you for listening to Murder by Nature. If you enjoyed today's episode, leave us a rating or a review on Apple, Spotify, wherever you're listening to. And be sure to come back next Thursday for part 2 of the Love Triangle. Until then, I'm Jasmine Ramirez, reminding you to stay vigilant. Stay safe, and remember, don't get murdered, and for the love of all things dark, don't become the murderer. You've been warned, you beautiful haunted souls.